Good evening. Tonight is Wednesday, June 29th, and this is the Hendrick-Hudson School Board of Education meeting. The board has just left our executive session and we're back in public session. Can we please stand for the pledge of allegiance? To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We're going to make a slight change to the agenda. We'll approve the agenda first, and then we're going to have our strategic plan update because we have several people waiting online for us. I don't want to leave them hanging too long in their digital waiting room. And then we'll continue on with the consent agenda, et cetera, as stated on our agenda here. So can I get a motion to approve the agenda as stated, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. So our first order of business will be our presentation, which is our strategic plan update. So we'll start with the happy thing. Yeah.
Hi, can you hear us?
Yeah, we can hear you. Can't see you though.
I just let them all in the meeting, so they might not be aware.
Good evening, everybody. We are ready when you are.
All right, we're ready for you. You want to hear me?
Yep.
Okay.
Yes,
All right.
I can hear you, and we're ready. Superintendent Hochreiter, if you wanted to provide some opening remarks, and then we will get started.
Thanks, Ronnie. Welcome to you and a team of various staff members and community members who are joining us remotely for a very important update regarding our strategic plan. As the community may remember, I want to go take a walk down memory lane. Our school district is rich in strategic planning for many, many decades, and strategic plans in our district have resulted in facilities upgrades, instructional program opportunities, more rigorous and relevant programs and courses for students. And it was in very late 2016 that the Board of Education was ready to re-up our strategic plan. And what happened was our plan got sidelined when Indian Point announced that they were closing in January of 2017. That set off a series of other discussions in our district and in our community, but we knew that we had to revisit the idea of strategic planning to set a course for the next 3 to 5 years. So in the fall, Education Elements, and I'll introduce Ronnie, who will lead tonight's discussion. Ronnie and some of his counterparts in Education Elements led many meetings full of hours with hundreds of participants, whether it was live meetings in person or virtual meetings, and certainly hundreds of folks were able to participate and give us some feedback through various surveys throughout this process. So while we wanted to arrive at this point last month in May, we had to wait an additional month to make sure we had ample participation from folks who are going to be introduced shortly. But I'll turn it over to Ronnie so he can let our community and our Board of Education know where we are in terms of our strategic plan and making that actionable and some of our timeline and next steps. So Ronnie, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Just wanted to check, is the audio okay? Can you hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. First, thank you for that introduction. We're really grateful to be presenting one final time before we start to wrap up this process. And we're really grateful also to be joined by a diverse panel of representatives from this process that you'll have a chance to hear from this evening. By way of introductions, my name is Ronnie Banjarian. I am now closing out my second full school year working with Hendrik Hudson. And so I feel really grateful to be working alongside you all for such a long time, and then specifically over this past year, as you walk this journey, and we're able to walk alongside you. And I'm joined by my colleague, Dana Britt. Dana, if you wanted to come off mute and introduce yourself, and then I'll have all of our other co-facilitators come off mute one at a time and introduce themselves and their roles as well. Might be some connection issue, so no worries there. And so if you click next, you'll see the names of our co-facilitators, and in the order that your names appear on the screen, feel free to come off mute, share your name and your role. You're probably all very familiar faces, but we wanted to make sure that we give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. So starting with Penny, and then we'll go down the line.
I'm Penny Hine. I am on Pillar 1 Student Engagement, and I'm a co-facilitator with Michelle Piccolo-Hill. I'm a teacher in the district. My children did go here, and I live in the district.
Michelle.
Sorry, I can't tell the order. My name is Michelle Piccolo-Hill, and I'm a parent in the district. I'm also vice president of the PTA at the high school, and I will be vice president of PTA in Blue Mountain Middle School. I have 4 children in the district. My oldest is now entering her 2nd year in college, and then I'll have a senior, a sophomore, and a 6th grader.
Hi, my name is Christina Fiel. I'm a teacher here in the district at the high school, and I am on Pillar 2 Real World Initiative.
Hi, I'm Erica Mills. I worked on Pillar 3 Clear and Targeted Communications. And until tomorrow, I am a middle school PTA president. And then next week I will be a board member.
Hi, I'm Janine Eichenholz. I am a parent of 2 rising sophomores and a rising 7th grader. Starting on Friday, I'll be taking over from Erica as co-president of the middle school PTA, and I'm also the secretary at the high school PTSA, and I represent Pillar 4, the shared decision-making process.
Thank you so much, everybody. We're really grateful that you're able to join us. So what are we going to be discussing today? The objectives for our short presentation this evening is to provide a final update on the progress of the work that we've been doing this past year, as well as give each of our co-facilitators a chance to preview the initiatives and actions that are aligned to their planning team's particular pillar or focus area. And the way that we'll do that is I'll first provide a summary of the work so far, and then I'll hand over the mic to the co-facilitators, and we'll spend the bulk of the time hearing from them about the initiatives and actions and how we hope to bring the strategic plan to life. Finally, I'll close us out and give you everybody, if you're watching live or if you're watching a recording, we'll actually have a chance to get a sneak peek of the final document of the plan, which is almost done, as well as preview what we're calling the implementation home base. And I'll dig a little bit deeper about what that means and how we're going to use that tool. So speaking of monitoring and implementation, we are right at the cusp of between that yellow row and that red row. We are about to be ready to launch. The design of the plan has been completed very iteratively, and we've gotten lots of feedback on the content and the graphic design of the plan. And we wanted to just provide, like I said, one final update before the official launch of the plan and going into implementation of the initiatives that are articulated in the plan. On the next slide, you'll see we wanted to just highlight, this is not an exhaustive list. This process has been touched by hundreds of members of the Hendrick Hudson community, whether they provided feedback or they attended a focus group or a one-on-one interview or filled out one or both of our surveys that we sent out over the course of the past year. But we did want to highlight the names of the folks that were directly involved in the planning teams that are aligned to each of the 4 pillars of the strategic plan. The steering team representation, this is not the full list of the steering team, simply the members of the steering team who are also a member of that particular planning team. I wanted to highlight that we worked very diligently to ensure that there was equitable and diverse representation across all 4 of the pillars. And I'm really proud to also mention that we had some direct involvement from some students as well, whether those were 8th grade students or high school students, and you'll see their names highlighted with either an MS or an HS. So take a moment and look at the names and the representation. And on the next slide, I wanted to, again, very briefly give you a sense of what we're working with when we talk about a strategic plan, all the different parts of the plan over the course of the past 9 months. We've been going down layer by layer of this house analogy, starting at the mission and vision and beliefs. And then the last time we had a chance to be presenting in front of you all, we really dove into those 4 focus areas or pillars. And on the next slide, you'll see that, you'll have to click through all of these. So that's fine. And then on the next slide, you'll see that today our main focus is those final 2 layers, the objectives and goals, KPIs, and initiatives. So you may be familiar that with the fact that there are 4 pillars of the strategic plan organized around 2 themes. The first theme, which is well-rounded learners, has to do mostly with the experience of students at Hendrick Hudson, and those 2 pillars are student engagement and real-world experiences. And the second theme, which is community cohesion, has to do with the community at large, and those pillars are clear and targeted communications and shared decision-making. On the final slide that I will present before handing it off, I wanted to very quickly give you a sense of what has been going on since the last time that we presented in front of the board and in front of the community. Over the course of 5 weeks between April and May, all 4 of those planning teams that you saw those rosters of earlier met in a self-directed fashion as many times as they could and wanted, and really brought their initiatives to life on what we called project canvases. They brainstormed initiatives, actions, and success metrics. That was a 5-week process. Then in early May, you may recall receiving another round of stakeholder engagement, a survey to gather feedback specifically on those proposed initiatives. Then in mid-May, we met with the steering team in a virtual session. We parsed through all of the proposed initiatives and began to identify the highest leverage initiatives on 2 axes. The axis of ease, whether this initiative was really easy or really difficult to implement, and the axis of impact, whether what is the range and scope of the impact of this initiative. And that really kickstarted the process of understanding which initiatives should we prioritize in the first year, in the coming year, school year 22-23, and which initiatives should live in which phases of implementation between now and 2027. And I will have a chance to talk a little bit more about that later on in the session. The last thing I'll say is in the past couple of weeks, we've also been fully developing the physical look and feel of the plan. And we are almost done with the graphic design of the plan. So we're really, really proud of that. And we hope that you all are proud of it and really like it as well as the development of that implementation home base, which will be the one-stop shop, a public-facing one-stop shop of all of the initiatives and the process and the progress towards meeting those goals for each of the initiatives. So without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to Michelle and Penny who are going to spend the next 5 minutes talking to you a little bit about Pillar 1, the initiatives aligned to Pillar 1, as well as any rationale that their team and discussions that their team held in order to arrive at those initiatives. And then we'll go through, we'll do Pillar 2, 3, and 4. So I'm going to go on mute. Michelle and Penny, the floor is yours, and take it away.
Thank you.
One, differentiation of academic opportunities. We discussed at length. And we talked about the fact that a lot of times we make sure that struggling students have opportunities to move up, but we don't always give the students who are at the top some differentiated instruction. So we wanted to make sure that all students get what they need, no matter where they fall on the bell curve, whether they're at the bottom, whether they're at the top, whether they're in the middle, have a chance to have differentiated instruction. And we talked about the fact that if we gave some professional development and talked about how you could take one lesson and differentiate it or use different books, either way would be fine. It would be up to the teacher and how the teacher wanted to present it, as long as there were opportunities within the classroom for each student to have what they needed met.
We also are very aware that there are certain benchmarks that the teachers in the schools must adhere to, just, benchmarks that the state requires. So basically, this is giving some autonomy to the teacher to say, you can tailor your lesson to these kids, no matter where they are and what they need, as long as you're meeting these benchmarks. And again, as Penny said, empowering them to do that was something that we talked a lot about, basically telling them that you have the support of the district and the support of the administration to do this and tailor the lesson. The next one we had was focusing on holistic growth, because when we were talking about how education is not just about an academic education when kids go into school. When children go into school, they are learning on all different fields. They are learning academically, socially, emotionally. And we know that to really make it a successful opportunity for children, we have to hit all of those measures. So we looked at providing additional opportunities through extracurricular opportunities, through emotional and health support, mental support, and just hitting children where they need the help. Again, whether it's academically, emotionally, or socially.
And in the middle school and the high school, that might be adding additional classes. It might be opening classes up. It might be after school opportunities, as well as making sure the elementary school has changes in after school activities as well, because it's a little different in the classroom than it is in the middle school and the high school, where maybe there's some opportunities for students to choose classes that might be more of what they need as well.
And part of that thinking is also that children are different. People are different. Our community has so much diversity, which gives us so much strength. And really targeting what a child needs. What my kids need is going to be different from Penny's kids and different from Erica's kids, so that can go the whole gamut. And hopefully trying to pull in and use facets of these children's lives to influence some of the lessons that the children have and some of the opportunities, some of the clubs that are available.
And that leads into our third, because we want the students to take more power of their own learning and responsibility for themselves. And you can teach them as they grow up from kindergarten all the way up to take a different level of input in their own education, in their own choices. And we want to make sure that we give them independence and basically that it's an all-round experience, that they get to take part in advocating for themselves, which a lot of times they don't have. And we're going to do a lot of these things by hearing from the students themselves, hearing from the parents, having the teachers see what their students are asking for and what they need to make sure that every child has all of these met, so that they're well-rounded and have an experience in school that leads them to where they need to be when they leave school.
And one of the points that we spoke about was that, when a child goes into a school, they learn again academically and through extracurricular opportunities, sports, musicals, whatever that they're interested in, art. But we want to enhance their verbal and written communication skills too, because being able to advocate for yourself, not only with the written word, but also, talking in a forum like this is a very powerful skill that really will help the children achieve in their life going forward. So we also think that that's something that needs to be addressed and should also be strengthened and considered.
Students have to be able, like Michelle was saying, to speak in a forum like this, but also to speak up for themselves and to be able to ask questions as well as speak up when necessary. Because if they see the path that they're headed on and they want something different, they need to be able to know who to go to and how to advocate for themselves, getting what they need. And if we start training them through elementary school, by the time they get to middle and high school and leave the buildings, totally leave Hen HUD, they should be able to maneuver through society because they've already had that training here in school.
I guess just one more thing that we had discussed was that, with the differentiating academic opportunities, we know that some of those opportunities are already available in the high school, and they start somewhat in the middle school. We were talking about broadening those and increasing those opportunities in the elementary school and the middle school, because when you have a child, for example, that may be high achieving or accelerated, sometimes they sit there and they have to wait, and you can lose them at that point. You can lose their interest and they may learn that they can just coast. And what we really want to do is hit every kid and hit every need that they have so that they can really become the best individual, learn the most, have the best opportunity, to give them the most opportunities once they're out of school. Because we really want their academic and their extracurricular career to be stellar so that when they leave, they really can just take what the school and the district has given them and just fly.
We discussed at length that there are really two populations. The kids that are really on level and the kids that struggle, they get what they need, but the kids that are just above where the strugglers get help, but maybe not quite where the classroom teacher is, and the kids that are above that are somewhat needing more support where they are. And we want to make sure that they get that so that when they leave elementary school, their middle school and high school experience will be what they need, and they'll be able to get on the level that they need to be based on where they are.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Michelle and Penny. And I think we're ready to move on to Pillar 2 and hand the mic off to Christina.
Hi, so I'm representing Pillar 2 today. Before I get into sort of each area, I did want to acknowledge all of the very honest feedback that we received from the faculty at the middle and at the high school. We had separate meetings there, and the students. It was really eye-opening, and we worked really diligently to make sure that all of those points and ideas and input that they gave us was woven throughout our initiative. So when we looked at real world experiences, we broke it down into 3. So you have increasing cultural experiences, providing multiple pathways, and embedding real world skills into student experience. So increasing cultural experiences, the one thing that sticks to mind when we were meeting and was the idea of having the global citizen, especially in a post-COVID, or I don't know that we're post-COVID, but nonetheless, sort of after remote learning, we're not limited to our classrooms in the same way that we were before. So we talk, when we talk about increasing cultural experiences, we're talking about through all age levels, creating global relationships such as foreign exchange students or sister schools in other countries. Right now, it's a lot easier. We can just sort of hop on a Google Meet and have these exchanges. Increasing student cultural celebrations and continue our seal of biliteracy up at the high school. And then the other thing that came from it was trying to bring languages into our elementary schools. So there's going to be an investigation into pathways on how to do so and increase that early visibility to language. When we look at initiative 2, providing multiple pathways through learning opportunities and course offerings, we really spent a lot of time talking about, you know, we have a very diverse population, and, you know, not everybody follows the typical path of sort of, or the typical proposed path in the past, whereas, you know, you kind of go through school and then you have college, providing our students different avenues to get to their endpoint. For some students, it might be college. For some students, it might be work. Other students, it might be college and work, or some order of that. So one of the things we said is we'll provide increased opportunities for students to learn about these multiple pathways through summer opportunities, lunch career series. We talked at length about having an alumni engagement and almost a network of support like that, career days and fairs, job readiness, learning experiences, and trips. We talked about creating a database of resources and hobbies, again, going back to having that network, and kind of tapping into, we have such a talented staff here in the district, so tapping into the hobbies and diverse backgrounds that our staff come from, right? And creating that network. You know, you'll be surprised what we have here, and you can say, oh, you can just, you know, go and talk to Ms. Hines about this topic. You know, she loves this, and creating that within our school community. And we want to expand on the career development and occupational studies, or CDOS, to interest students, revisiting existing programs and events with a current focus on college to include more, again, of that secondary pathway, and exploring the modifying of a schedule to allow for a sort of senior internship experience during the school year. The last part, the last initiative, embedding real world skills into the student experience. We talked about this K through 12. We felt like rather, when you're talking about real world experiences, sometimes it's really easy to get caught up in the secondary side of things, but we were very cognizant to include the full K to 12 experience. And the one thing that sticks out in my mind here is having, you know, everyone having their toes in the sand. So giving everyone the experiences so that way, as they sort of continue on in their academic career, they have them to fall back on and say, oh, I tried that. I want to explore more on, or to help support some of the decisions that my colleagues in the previous pillar were just talking about. So the way we talked about doing this is continue to support the development of processes and spaces for students to experience entrepreneurship and business. There was quite a few ideas going on about like creating a school business in itself and having the students take part in all that. And some of these things did or do exist to some degree, right? As we're coming sort of out of that remote era and trying to put things in place that maybe either were or better upon those things. We will emphasize the importance of developing financial literacy within all students, expanding opportunities for students to research and speak publicly. So just like the previous pillar talked about, having opportunities to sort of speak in forums like these, and provide internship experiences, mentorships, and peer leadership. So those were what we came up with. The team itself met often, and we didn't want to lose anything, but we tried our best to fit everything into these three domains. When we first, it didn't look like this pretty document when we first did it, and kind of we kept moving things around and trying to see how we can group them together so that we had the maximum reach for all of our students.
Thank you, Christina. For pillar 3, Erica, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. I wanted to acknowledge everyone that worked on this with me. And we did speak to a lot of people, and we had student engagement as well. And it gave us a lot of insight moving forward. And, you know, the toughest part about this pillar and coming to identify the main initiatives was when you start to talk about communications, a lot of things that come up are tactical. And, you know, we're not here to identify how to fix everything. So we had to kind of think of it a little bit more broad. And one of the things, you know, we were tasked with here overall was to ensure that the district, that all stakeholders feel included, engaged, heard, and have the ability to access information and have a baseline of what they need to know to be an active participant in the community. And there's a lot of things that we're already doing and we've improved upon. We worked from that. So our first was initiative 3, we're calling this initiative 3A, was establishing a communications, public relations, and an engagement function. So we envisioned it being either a group of people that already work for the district or maybe a new employee that basically is in charge of public relations, and also communication, how that gets put out to the community, and works very closely with the administration to make sure that everything is streamlined and easy to navigate and understand. Develop a communications plan for stakeholders, and for, if that looks like, and a lot of the feedback we had gotten from the community was, we used to get this great calendar, we don't get that anymore. So we have to look at what's the best way to communicate across all channels with people that live, don't have kids in the buildings anymore, and also the people that are in the buildings. So that was the first piece. The second piece was the district website. The district website, I know we have updated it a few times in the past few years. It's kind of clunky, right? So it takes multiple clicks to get to different things. But I think what we actually need to do is identify how to make it more of an intuitive experience. And that's what we discussed in our group, is making it a more intuitive experience, making it more user-friendly, making it easier to search and navigate. And we would work with, hopefully, somebody that does this professionally and get a better website for our community. And I think that we also, one of this piece of this was to encourage people that live within the community, whether they live in the community, whether they're students, whether they're parents, to all know to go to, that website to find information. And then the third was the increased access, visibility, and information sharing between leadership and stakeholders. And the goal here is to help create an environment of positivity, build more community, and build more access to, our district leadership, Board of Ed, and make sure that in doing that, when you create these positive environments, relationships are built and enhanced, and there's more trust built. And that goes along with just encouraging the opportunity for people to have a voice and a place to come and know that they're going to get an answer. It might not always be the answer they necessarily want, but as long as they know how to get an answer in the proper channels in a positive way. Everyone should feel comfortable to reach out to, who is in charge, following, a chain of command. And I think we have to enhance that experience that's what we came up with, enhancing that experience for our constituents.
Thank you, Erica. And last but not least, Janine, whenever you're ready.
I would say they saved the best for last, but I think all of these are equally important. We had an amazing subgroup committee as well, and we had the most interesting conversations, and some really, really fascinating things came up. It was really wonderful to hear from so many other parents and staff members and understand how people are viewing this and where they're coming from, because I think that's really important in figuring out where we want to go. So flipping back and forth between the slides. So what you're looking at, you see increasing community involvement in the decision-making process. And the first step on that, if you're looking at the blueprint, initiative 4A, talks about creating a flow chart to clarify and codify how key decisions are made, including a list of standing district and Board of Ed committees, as well as committee chairs and contact points for people to get in touch with them. A key part of that, though, is to add staff, parents, and community to these committees wherever possible. In order to get buy-in from the community, to get that involvement, you really need to have as many people as can be included on many of these committees. So number one, identify the process, who's going to be involved, and then identify the opportunities for more engagement, more involvement from the community. We really wanted to do this to improve the parent and the community understanding of the educational process, with the idea that the more that parents are involved and the more they see firsthand, the better their understanding and more questions will be answered, sometimes even before they come up. The Having that community involvement can assist the district in creating and implementing programs that better fit the needs and desires of the community, which is also incredibly important, and will give the community a sense of pride, a feeling of involvement. Parents and community members want to know that their voices are heard and that their participation, their ideas, their thoughts, their questions are all being valued. So including them wherever we can is going to be the first step in that process. If there's anything else to add on that. And we feel that it just the benefits on this will be huge. The second one, expanding opportunities to develop leadership competencies to better engage with stakeholders. Well, let's see. 4B, to explore opportunities for executive coaching, leadership competency development. To give community members more involvement will increase both the transparency, the collaboration, and the empowerment that we highlighted as values important to our community. It also will give our leaders real-time feedback to allow them to re-examine and adjust policies and other decisions, as well as mentioned before, creating and implementing programs that reflect the needs and desires of the community. This will also give more accountability and hopefully more responsiveness with our district leaders, which in turn will foster more trust and garner more support for district and Board of Ed initiatives. Our last one is diversity, equity, and inclusion within all decisions. And honestly, I really don't have anything to add on this. I think it's very self-explanatory that it's incredibly important to have stakeholders of all different colors, shapes, sizes, backgrounds, ethnicities, and everything to really get a feel for what who our community is, what we need, what we want, how can we reflect that back to our students through our policies, through our educational classes, through our curriculum, through our activities and programs. This was the one that I think we spent the most time just talking about, and it is fascinating. I think that there is so much there that we can really explore, and this is something that we felt would be incredibly beneficial to every single person in HenHUD. That's pretty much all I have.
Thank you, Janine and all. I hope that after all of our facilitators shared that Board of Ed and anybody who's watching this live stream, that most of your questions have been answered about the strategic direction of the plan, but we will have time at the end for questions as well. On this next slide, the slide that's on your screen right now, this is actually a sneak peek into what the document of the plan will actually look like. This is the goal of this was to just build excitement and show you give you a sense, a taste of what it will look like. But also over the course of the next two slides, I wanted everybody to see how each components of the anatomy of the strategic plan, if you're thinking back to that house metaphor, how each of those components will show up on the materials that will be launched in front of the community. And so we are actually developing two materials that will be launched in tandem. The first is this, that's on the slide. It is the document of the plan. And it basically houses the focus areas, the description or the strategic direction of that focus area. And so the one that I'm using as an example is that first pillar that Penny and Michelle spoke to, student engagement. There's a brief description of what that pillar represents and why it should be part of our strategic plan. And then there is a brief description of each of the three initiatives, 1A, 1B, 1C, and then for the second page, it'll be 2A, 2B, 2C, and so on and so forth. We've gotten a lot of really tremendous feedback on the look and feel and the design of the strategic plan, and we have an in-house graphic designer that has been pouring a lot of love into making sure that the vision of the plan, not only the content and the strategic direction, but also the vision of the look and feel really comes to life. So I wanted to preview that. And then on the next slide, I wanted to preview a rough draft of what we're calling our implementation timeline and home base. What it is at its core, it's a Google Sheet, but it is a very dynamic and adaptable Google Sheet. It is a public-facing document that we hope will be easy to navigate and interpret. And if you're thinking about that image of the house, where, yes, the strategic plan will have our mission, vision, values, and then just generally what each of those initiatives aligned to the pillars are. But you might ask, well, how do we know that we're on the right track? What are the goals that we're setting? What is the timeline? Who owns what? How do we make sure that we can go in and check that we are, what is the status of X initiative or Y initiative? And so it is a very exhaustive and dynamic list of all of the actions aligned to each of the initiatives. And it'll be a space, like I said at the beginning, a one-stop shop for the public to come in and keep track of, hey, initiative 1B, these are the things aligned to, these are the actions that are going to help initiative 1B come to life. These are the goals that have been identified for each of for maybe just the first year or maybe just the first 2 years. And so we are currently in the process of, with our current project team, and then as there is a Board of Ed transition with some of the new board members, to make sure that just at least going into the first year that the goals aligned to those first initiatives that we want to target are realistic, and that we have success metrics and KPIs that are very easy, understandable and very visible to the public. And so you'll see on the slide, it says efficacy, fidelity, and implementation goals. We'll dive more into those when the plan is ready to be launched and this becomes a public-facing dynamic document, like I said. And then the goal is that there will also be a place where you can see, as a member of the community, what the status of each of these actions aligned to each of these initiatives are. And so I wanted to very unequivocally say that there was a tremendous amount of work that all of the planning teams did over the course of 5 very short weeks. Like, it was just 5 weeks, and all of this came about from 5 weeks of work, in addition to all of the groundwork that was laid over many months with the project team and the steering team. And we wanted to make sure that there was a place that reflected all of this work, and that all of this work in some way is going to be reflected in the strategic direction of the district over the course of the next 5 years. So on the next slide, the final thing that I wanted to preview is just a very brief timeline of implementation. And then Superintendent Hawkrider, if you wanted, before we open up for Q&A, if you wanted to provide any more context here, feel free to do that. I was going to say come off mute, but feel free to just do that. So what we're hoping to do is over the summer, we'll start to think about some internal kickoffs of various teams that are going to be in charge of the implementation of specific initiatives, doing some initial kickoffs. But you might ask, who are these teams? Who's going to be involved? That's a great question. And so we're putting out a very initial call to action. There's going to be a more formal process that we're going to help develop over the course of the next couple of weeks. But a very initial call to action, if you are in the cafeteria right now, if you are watching from home, or if you are watching this recording, I have my email up there. If you are interested in being involved in an implementation team or being involved in this process, once the strategic plan document is published, please feel free to shoot me an email. And like I said, this is just an initial call to action. And over the next couple of weeks, you'll hear from us and from the district how you can be involved in a more formalized way. We just want to make sure that this is an open call and that anybody who wants to be involved has the opportunity to. And then the final thing I'll say, that second point, is with everything going on with some of the transitions happening in the fall with Princeton Plan, we very intentionally are deciding to do the official announcement and launch of the plan sometime in mid-fall, sometime in October, to give folks, parents, students, staff an opportunity to transition into the school year before the implementation of these initiatives comes to life. That's all I had. Superintendent Hawkrider, if you wanted to add any more context to what's going to happen in the next few weeks and months, and then we'll open up the floor for questions.
Yeah, we felt it was really important to not have a false start of kicking off the plan in either late August or September. Exactly what Ronnie said, given all the enormity of other district initiatives taking place, that we've got one shot to get this right. We'd rather wait until school is started and settled and some of the transition dust settles before we re-engage the community with launching this. It also gives us additional time, as Ronnie mentioned, in the summer to have a series of soft rollouts. One is going to be with the Board of Education, part of the retreat. Another will be with our administrative team later in the summer. And then lastly, to make sure we know community members and staff that want to be a part of this, so that we have all of our information in front of us when we launch. You know, the priority right now, if we fast forward 10 weeks, obviously, all things considering the Princeton plan, as well as revisiting a lot of our safety and security protocols, not only in light of what has happened in Texas, but as we come off of and out of the pandemic and get back into what our school environment was before that, we have a lot of retraining and muscle memory to revisit. So we wanted to make sure we did a couple things very strategically and save the launch of the strategic plan until our community is more ready, and we believe that will happen in October.
Thank you so much. I want to open up the floor for questions. If there are questions specific to any one of the four pillars, I would invite our co-facilitators, if you are compelled, to come off mute and answer the question yourself. And if there are more general questions about the process or the outcomes or the timeline, then either myself or my colleague Dana will be happy to answer those.
Go ahead. So is it the implementation teams that are going to be coming up with the meat of the, I guess I'm confused there. Like, how do we get to the KPIs and outlining specific steps? Is that part of the implementation team, or is that happening at the steering or planning level?
Most of the initial thought around the KPIs and actions aligned to the initiatives have already been thought through by the planning teams. That some of our facilitators spoke to very briefly about, well, we'll do this at the high school, or we'll do this at the middle school, examples like that. We have built, so that screenshot of the implementation dashboard is fully built. And so there is that initial stab at what those actions look like and what those KPIs look like. But over the course of the next couple of weeks, as we transition the project team and have a couple of new board members on board, we'll restart those conversations to ensure that those KPIs, those success metrics, and the timeline for each of the actions is realistic, feasible, and we'll start to put together specific implementation teams around specific actions or initiatives.
Okay, I guess that's where I'm confused. Like, the implementation teams, what, if people want to stay involved in the process, what are you asking them to do?
So if folks were involved in the planning in any of the teams this past year, they are welcome to be involved in the upcoming year in implementation. The implementation, it depends on the action or the initiative. If it's an action aligned to differentiating academic opportunities, then it might be a team of teachers or staff members that are thinking about and maybe perhaps putting together some relevant PD for their colleagues. If it's perhaps something to do with one of the shared decision-making initiatives, then that team will be coming up with ways to ensure that diversity, equity, and inclusion is embedded in all decision-making processes. And so, like I said, we didn't want to preview all those because we didn't want to give too much away, but there is a list of actions that already exists, and it may be the right list for that particular initiative. And there may be things that need to be adjusted. But there is a list of preliminary actions aligned to every single one of those initiatives that once we put together a team, those will be the actions that they will be tasked with.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so thanks for all the work that you did. I know it was a big effort. I do have a question about how we incorporated best practices and thinking from around the world into what we're doing here. Because with the group that I was in, it was a very talented group, but I would say that we did not have the perspective of what other school districts around the world were doing. And, I think it would have helped us with some of our thinking. So, I'd like to know, was it not at this point that we're doing that, or how was it done, or is it something that we're just not doing?
I can take a stab at that one. Thank you for this question. It's important for the teams to build out the preliminary pieces. And I think at this point, it's a great opportunity to continue to engage. And nothing is completely finalized at this point. As my colleague Ronnie mentioned, we have a list of the preliminary actions, but those are not set in stone. So of course, being able to engage, quite a few of the actions are do further research or conduct further research. So definitely, I think that's an amazing opportunity and idea, and would love to continue to have more ideas from around the world.
And just to add on to what Dana mentioned, I plan to mention this, and I don't know if I did, in the implementation dashboard document, we'll have an opportunity to identify whether each of those specific actions, which phase of implementation they will be. And our 3 proposed phases are called research, discovery, and implementation. The things that are ready to be implemented will be implementation phase right away. But there are numerous actions, and sometimes all of the actions aligned to a particular initiative that the project team in a preliminary fashion said, I don't think we're ready just yet. And so we're going to spend this next school year, 22-23, in discovery. And so, or research. And so if we are in a research phase for a particular action, for example, one of Christina's real world experiences is thinking about opportunities to bring foreign languages to elementary schools. That's not going to be implementation phase right away in the first year. And so if we have an implementation team dedicated to that, then that first year will be spent conducting research and doing discovery and seeing what other school districts in the state of New York, in similar states, similar districts around the country, and perhaps even around the world. And so that plan takes into account whether we're ready to implement right away, what are the actions we need to take, and if we're not, then what are the parameters that we need to follow in order to make sure that we're conducting the appropriate amount of research before we put something into action.
That's great. It's helpful. I just want to make sure that, with the work that we're getting from you, my thought, the objective was, it's not just project management that we're getting from you, but it's also insight and, suggestions and guiding us in the right direction. And, using that knowledge from around the world or, whatever real world experience you have to streamline what our teams are doing. So I had limited exposure with our team, but, I think the team was fantastic. For my personal experience, I did not feel a lot of that guidance. So I'm hoping we can do more of that going forward.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, Ronnie, and thank you to all of the facilitators for joining us this evening. We really appreciate all of the work that's been done on the steering and the planning teams, and from the project team, we're very grateful. So thank you very much for spending your time with us this evening.
Thank you, Lisa and Carol. It was a pleasure to have both of you on the project team. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, Dana.
And thank you to everybody on the call as well. I hope you have a fantastic evening. Bye-bye.
All right, so that will bring us to our more regular agenda items. We need to go to the consent agenda now. Does anybody have anything that they would like to pull from the consent agenda? Lisa?
I'd like to pull item 3.1, the corrective action plan for technology.
Thank you. Natalie?
I wanted to pull fiscal 3.3, the repair reserve.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, so can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Now we'll go to the items removed from the consent agenda. So the first one will be 3.1, the corrective action.
So it's my understanding there was an audit performed of our technology, and this is a corrective action plan that was approved, or that we're being asked to approve, I guess. And so I was wondering, I know beneath us here, and also, I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Thank you. If you could probably just address for us what the audit was about and what this corrective action plan entails.
Good evening. I'm Joanne Myers Caligari. He's actually with our EduTech team. EduTech is our IT vendor support team. So we did have an audit by our internal auditor member, Smith. And the consent agenda that you have in front of you is their report and also the corrective plans. Most of the things that are recommended there are procedural, and also during the board budget presentation, I had actually talked about implementing the NIST framework for our district. So that was also noted on here. Everything else on there, there's a couple of things around the NIST framework. For example, recommendation number 3 around encrypting our data. We are going to be looking at that for next school year. And also the VPN connection to remote desktop applications. So it's more secure network that people are connecting to. So that's also being looked at for coming school year. Two-factor authentication is also pointed out. Another area around the NIST framework that we're going to be looking at for next school year. So these are all things that, since I've been here now 8 months, we have looked at all of these cybersecurity areas to concentrate on for next school year.
So I think it's great that we're actually going to be using a framework going forward. What I would think you might also want to consider is looking at COVID and ISO. Because the NIST is very specific, and depending on which portion of NIST you're using, might be a little bit of overkill, right? There are also other components that NIST doesn't address that may be something in generally accepted privacy principles you might want to be looking at. So there are other frameworks, I think, besides NIST, because NIST, it's very focused. There are other more general ones that you might want to use too. Because I am concerned not just about someone hacking into our systems, but people internally that might have segregation of duties issues. So, you might have application issues, you might have internal potential issues, and you'll have external threats, right? So, and then we also have the ransomware threat. So we really need to focus on what I think is more cyber resilience versus cyber protection. So in the event that we do have some sort of event, we should be able to recover instantaneously. That is the hope. That's where we should be. So
NIST is definitely something we look at because New York State is putting a requirement on us to every school district have the NIST framework. And I do hear the privacy side, we're still looking at that side too. The data privacy for the people, the EDLA 2D. We're also auditing all of our systems to make sure that align with whose roles and responsibilities align with what they are doing as well.
Thank you.
Alan? No, go ahead.
So two questions. So were these added programs included in your budget that you put forth? And then the second one, what does this look like for a student? These added security protocols, does it change their everyday work on their computer, and how would that, you can explain that?
Yes, so we are putting some precautions in place that will increase the security. Like, for example, we are putting a network access control system, Fortinet, in place to kind of manage our wireless system. What it entails for the students is really registering what they're bringing into the district. Right now, we do have a BYOD network that students can connect to. But in the future, if they're bringing their own devices, they would have to register their device before we can allow them to use that device in the network. So there will be a little bit of that, but most of the other things is in the NIST, and Corey probably already know, it's more procedural, like incident response plan. What happens when an incident happens? Who do you contact? What do you need to do? Which systems do you need to get back on right away, like our finance system, for example? So those are the things. It's more procedure, and NIST is kind of like a framework that checks to make sure you did think about everything. But it doesn't really affect too much. But if you think about like two-factor authentication, for example, I'm sure you all have two-factor authentication on your financial systems or credit card systems. We're going to start with at least the administration first to get them into that two-factor authentication for our local network, our any main systems that we're doing. Teachers, we're going to have to, students, most districts don't do it because they're very limited. Everything is online these days, not really on our network. So teachers, on the other hand, it's going to be a sensitive topic because they're going to have to use that two-factor authentication. It receives on their phone. Most of them have a personal phone, but it will be something that we'll, think through and start to address it. Can't tell you that it's going to be 100% next year. My goal is to have all the administration 100% on two-factor authentication.
The student environment is a piece.
And then these are included, these costs, you included these programs already in next year's budget?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, Fortinet and 40 token, all of that is already included in that budget.
Excellent, thank you.
Ali, do you still have a question?
No, my question was about the budget.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Can I get a motion to approve item 3.1, corrective action? Can I get a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. The next item that was pulled from our consent agenda was item 3.3, which is the repair reserve.
I just wanted to clarify for the public what is in the final document, so everyone knows how we're spending this money.
So I can give you a rundown. This was part of the presentation from a couple weeks ago, but just to remind everyone. At the middle school, there's an estimated $25,000 of work, which would be for the roof and facade. This will be included to seal various areas and recaulk some of the expansion joints and also refoam part of the roof that needs it. At BV, it's really one big project, but divided into two areas. One is to repave the sidewalk that connects Westchester Avenue to the school that goes up the hill and turns right, and also the front sidewalk repair outside the school. Those two combined for about $36,000. And then lastly, Frank G, window panel repair. So the veneer on many of the outside windows needs to be repaired. We've had some issues with ventilation loss or heat loss, but also they need to be replaced because the old veneer is metal and starts to rust.
needs updated.
Was there anything at the middle school? It's the same doc, everything that we looked at a few weeks ago, it's exactly the same.
Right.
Okay, I just didn't know if there had been changes between them. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
This is all to be completed during the summer before the school year begins? Or is that not determined?
It will depend on what we have to outsource. Some of it will not be. For example, like the sidewalk repairs are, we have to use contractors, state approved contractors for that. Some of the roofing stuff, we have contractors that are on retainer that could probably get to that quicker. But I would suggest that probably the sidewalk is what would take the longest.
Anybody else? All right, can I get a motion to approve fiscal 3.3? So moved. Can I get a second? All in favor? Okay. That brings us to item 4.1, which is our acceptance of donations. We have 2 donations this evening, and I'm going to need my hands to read them. The first one is a very special one. It's from the Notrika family, who donated a used Weber Genesis grill with a value of $1,100. Thank you very much, Corey and family. I'm sure it will be well used. And the second donation is a donation for the drum kit for Blue Mountain Middle School. There's an additional donation in the amount of $353 from Blue Mountain Middle School PTA for a new drum kit for the jazz club and the band students in the Blue Mountain Middle School. So excellent. Maybe we can have jazz and barbecue. That would be lovely. Can I get a motion to approve these donations, please? Second, all in favor?
I have to abstain.
That will bring us to our superintendent's report.
Yes, a follow-up from our conversation 2 weeks ago about implementing the Princeton plan. We are well on our way. I'll give you a rundown of activities that have taken place just over the last couple of days. So in all 3 elementary schools, cleaning has begun. At Furnace Woods Elementary School, they are ready for the ESY program. It's a reminder that the district's elementary ABC programs are housed at Furnace Woods over the summer. Those children, part of their program is called ESY, Extended School Year. They basically have a 12-month program or a 10-month program, September to June, and then an additional 6 weeks of instruction in the summer. Frank G. Lindsay cleaning has begun on the 2nd floor, and at BV they started in the back wing. Yesterday, Tuesday, main office materials were moved from main offices to where their new teams will go. Nurse equipment in nurse's office or specific equipment that needed to be moved is also being moved. Yesterday also started the moving of age equipment materials. So these are tables, desks, and chairs, or the kidney tables for reading groups, or specific materials or supplies for kindergarten classrooms or first grade classrooms. So that is also begun being moved on Tuesday. Also the storage pods where we collected and held everyone's materials. Those have been moved yesterday and today. They've been emptied at the new schools and waiting for classrooms to be given the okay. We anticipate that classrooms will be available to staff as early as July 25th. And once those classrooms are given the green light, principals, or I'm sure someone from the main office will call those teachers and they'll be invited to come in and start packing up as soon as the end of July. Other equipment will be moved over the next couple of weeks. So this is bigger equipment like filing cabinets and bookshelves. Those are going to be moved after the pods are moved and after the main offices and nurses' offices are set up. So what we'll do is we'll get into a routine where we post these updates on our Princeton Plan website weekly so folks can understand where we are and what's happening and who's doing what. But certainly we have a target date of the week of July 25th to be able to invite some teachers in based on what parts of the schools are cleaned and what parts are ready to go. There also is a follow-up from a question that Corey had about our budget to implement the Princeton plan. So in terms of moving teachers and supplies and equipment and additional contractual services if needed on the operations and maintenance end. All of those costs have been built into the budget, similar to the question that was asked of Anita about some of the changes in technology. We reallocated some funds, but we don't anticipate, we see no reason why we would overspend the budget that the board approved, both on the curriculum end to get ready and on the operations and maintenance end. And we have not been expending that budget either. So I can't really tell you where we are because we haven't had to dip into it yet because we just started on Monday, but we can provide those updates as we go as well.
Okay, great. You mentioned our Princeton Plan website, and I believe it won a national award recently. Do you want to tell us about that?
It did. We're waiting for the official announcement, but the national, well, might as well, we'll tell everyone. We'll get it out shortly. The school district was recognized and won an award from the National, I'm going to get the acronym on, but basically National School Public Relations Association. We had been communicating with them some of our challenges over the last number of years, and we were invited to submit a communication strategy for their consideration. The one that we submitted and the one that was recognized nationally was the use of our Princeton Plan website as sort of an archive of our journey. If you've been on that website lately, a lot of information there. You do have to dig around for it, but it's a very thorough archive of not only where we are with the updates, but we can go back to how we began the process with the study back in 2018 and different references to Indeed Point closing and all of our meetings, meet and greets, and principal meetings, and all of those things. So it's very nice to be recognized, especially by a national group, and particularly for something that is as consequential as the Princeton Plan. So it's good to be recognized for things that sometimes not everyone's on the same page, but at least we know we have to work together to implement it with fidelity and to be successful. So once the National School Public Relations gives us the specific okay, we'll release it and we'll share with everyone. But thanks for reminding me. It's one of a million things happening, but a very, very important one. So we're very, very proud of that designation.
All right, any questions before we move
on? Can we plan some dates in August for the board to go through some of the elementary schools and see the progress?
Sure. Yeah, I think we want to wait, limp until July 25th, so we have a better idea. Because even without moving staff, if you're in any of our schools, we were just in a couple classrooms earlier today, and already the NETA and her tech team has been in and rewiring and moving. So yeah, we want to find a spot where we could see it before and after. But I think we'll be able to do that.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? All right, that will bring us to our first audience comments section on agenda items. In order to maintain an early board meeting and to allow the public to comment during our meetings, we do set aside this time for public comments. Each speaker should sign in with the district clerk prior to commenting. When called, each speaker should step up to the podium and state their name and affiliation if applicable prior to starting their comment. Letters, petitions, or other written material should be handed to the district clerk. Each speaker is permitted 3 minutes for their comments and must be recognized by the board president. All comments must be directed to the board. The board will listen to comments but will not necessarily debate or discuss items. Operational matters will be directed to school administrators for handling. I think I would know this by heart right now. The board is not permitted to address personnel or individual student matters in open session. We may limit repetitive comments in order to give time to others wishing to speak, as well as to maintain meeting efficiency. And the board expects comments to be made without interference from the audience in a civil manner. Carmen, do we have anybody signed up for agenda items? We do not. Okay. There are no speakers this evening for our audience comments on agenda items. So that will bring us to our committee reports. Do we have any committees on this week? I don't think so. The audit committee met and we discussed the findings that are in our agenda earlier. So that brings us to board comments and new business. I'm going to start off by saying, Lisa, it's been an honor to work with you as vice president, and the work that you've done in Westchester Putnam School Board Association and regional advocacy has been admirable. Thank you for that. Bill, it's been great working with you. I replaced you when you took your break a while ago, and it's been really great to be able to be on the board with you as well.
So on behalf of the board and our administrative team, we have some recognition gifts for Carol, Lisa, and Bill for their 30+ years of combined service to our district, which is incredible. You will be missed. You have been outstanding advocates for kids, both very overtly, and sometimes as a board has to act very covertly and quietly and on the sidelines. But you've been responsible for graduating thousands of children, and I get the honor of shaking their hand. I've had the honor of shaking their hand, and I usually I try to ask all of them a question. Where are you going? What's your plan? Where are you going, or what's your plan? And I'm floored for students that are going to upper echelon universities, to kids that are going to work for their parents, kids who are going to serve our country in the military. That whole experience of kids making their pathway is because of your service and your commitment, your tireless commitment, and your thankless commitment. So on behalf of the board who's here and boards that you have worked with over the last 12+ years, thank you for your service, and we hope you're not a stranger.
Thank you. I hope I'm not a stranger also. For those of you who are coming on the board, and for those of you who are on the board, graduation every year is amazing. Take that opportunity to go and see those students graduating, because that work is in large part in your hands. A small part in your hands, in large part it's due to the families and the teachers and the students themselves. But it is inspiring to see the end product, as Charles Thompson used to like to say, and where our students are headed next. So it's a lot of fun. To our new board trustees that are incoming, they are in the audience here tonight. Good luck. I hope you enjoy and learn a lot from your board service experience, and look forward to you getting sworn in a week. Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments they'd like to make?
I'd like to say something. So I wanted to echo what Joe has said. It's been a privilege working with all three of you. The three of you have dealt with some issues that no board members have ever dealt with, not just in the state, but sometimes around the world. Not only do we have to deal with Indian Point closing and being on the precipice of collapse financially, to dealing with the pandemic and getting us all through that. Each of your knowledge and specific experience that you brought to the table is just absolutely invaluable. We build your financial knowledge, and everything that you brought to this board. I don't know how we'd ever replace something like that. I mean, it was absolutely invaluable. Lisa, your dedication and the time you spent, and all the external perspective you brought to this board, and the time you spent coaching. It's just amazing how much time you have spent making this a better district. And Lisa, Carol, last but not least, Carol, your leadership, keeping us on the right track, all the dedication. I don't know how you do it. I mean, the time you spent answering emails, talking to parents, dealing with district issues, and having your own practice on top of that, and a family. I just, you think Wonder Woman, right? It's just absolutely amazing, your dedication to this district, and it will be sorely missed. And, I wish you all luck. You will be missed, and I'm looking forward to the new board members coming on. But at the same time, we will very much miss you. And thank you for everything that you did for this district. I don't think people realize how much dedication and time and the work that you did really saved this district. So, thank you all for it.
Thank you, Corey. All right, so I think that brings us to the end of my last meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please? Oh, what?
Non-agenda.
Oh, non-agenda. I'm so
Sorry.
sorry.
We have no more comments.
We have no non-agenda comments this evening. Okay, so that messed up the end of my last meeting. Okay. All right, so that brings us to the end of my last meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please? Can I get a second? All in favor? Thank you. Good evening. The next board meeting will be July 6th. That will be the reorganization meeting, and our new trustees will be sworn in on that.